Hi, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. This is Roy Kessel, your host, and today we're very excited to have with us Dan Van Dyck. Dan is the Executive Director of Stand-up for the Cure. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Roy, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you with us today and learn more about the great work that you're doing. And I wanted to have you start with giving us a little bit of your background so people understand how you got to this spot.
Okay, I've been putting on paddling events for an awful long time, 25 years. I have worked with my friends at Ironman at a couple events for 3 or 4 years. 9 years ago, I was approached by a woman, Judy Vivian, who had just recovered from breast cancer and had used paddle sport as a way to get back in shape, to recover, and found that the community was super supportive. And she decided she felt lucky to be alive and wanted to give back. Susan G. Komen was her beneficiary of choice. She wanted it to involve paddling and didn't know where to start and was referred to me. Paddling in general, like if you have 50 to 100 people, it's a successful event. So I thought her expectations needed to be tempered a little bit. And I didn't know what to expect. Our first event, we had over 600 people and raised $60,000 in Newport Beach, California. And so I knew that, that had been the biggest paddling event that I had ever been to. So I knew we were onto something. We had a good program designed. My friend Mike Muir at the time was with Riviera Paddle Sports. They came on as a presenting sponsor. Mike and I developed a program, and it was a hit. Now we've been in 4 or 5 cities across the country. We've raised, $1.5 million, and we've screened over 1,800 participants on site for breast cancer and melanoma.
So that's quite an undertaking to put all of that together for 600 people and to do all of that screening. You talked about 25 years of experience. How did that background lead you this direction? In other words, what type of experience was that, and what types of events did you have experience running?
Well, so, with Hano Hano Ocean Challenge, it's a big paddling event with surf skis, paddleboards, stand-up paddleboards, outrigger canoes, flatwater kayak, it's Olympic style sprint boats. I took over that event in 1995 from our outrigger coach. Back in the day, that event was just 20 of us on surf skis. And we built that event to up over 650, 700 people, kids ages 6 to adults in their 80s that compete. So I've been putting on that event for 25 years. And I think, just the logistics and organization and outreach and connections helped me be successful with Stand-up for the Cure.
I think it's something that people that don't run events really don't have a good grasp on, is how many logistics and how many moving parts there are to executing this type of event. You're not in what we would call a controlled environment. It's not like you're in a hotel banquet room where you pretty much know the dimension. You have a pretty good sense of what the temperature is going to be, and you don't have to worry about the weather as you're putting that type of event together. So what are some of the challenges that you see when you're putting together this type of event?
Well, we're experiencing it right now. I just had to cancel the Newport event. We actually postponed it to November because of the coronavirus outbreak. So those are some of the things that get involved. Weather is always one. Paddler safety is another issue that's always in the forefront, and goes back down to porta potties and how the site layout, and if they're doing construction on a site, you have to be mobile and you have to change venues. There's a whole array. I've got spreadsheets to show you on things that can go wrong and things that you have to anticipate.
Well, certainly as you've put that together, there's a lot of people in our network that that run events, and you've obviously got great experience and track record on building those up. I think what we often hear is that events are frequently one of the more challenging ways to raise money because there's a lot of embedded costs in putting that together. Um, as you look at that, what are the areas where you found that you can get more efficiency as you grew as an organization?
Well, so that's a funny question because we use, so yes, events are expensive. You know, our events probably cost between $30,000 and $40,000 each, depending on the location. But our mission is more than just raising money. Our mission is building a strong, supportive community around paddling and breast cancer, promoting an active, healthy lifestyle, and then raising money and awareness for early breast cancer detection, treatment, research. So it's a multi-pronged mission. So it's not just scaled based on the money we raise. So we evaluate our success in different ways.
Obviously, as you're doing the screening and the outreach, there's a large education component that factors into that, something that you're probably able to draw on or draw attention to throughout the course of the year. So it's not just about being on site that day. You can accomplish a lot. So as you evaluate what makes you, what's a success in your world, what are the elements that you look at?
Well, so we, besides building the community through our events, we're trying to be relevant all year long. We don't want to be known as just a single day event. And the messaging is always hard to get out, but we're increasing it with blog posts on our website. We're developing a resource page so that folks can come to us and get answers or direction to resources that are available to them. You know, I field calls all the time about people that are frustrated and don't know what to do, don't know where to turn. And we have a great community of partners that I can refer them to, from Kaiser Permanente in Orange County to Mercy Health in the Midwest, to Hackley Community Care, to Susan G. Komen, the affiliates in certain areas where there are beneficiaries. So we want to be that resource for people on a daily basis, not just a Saturday in the month of May.
The way that you've put this together from a resource perspective, you talked about some of the partners that you have in terms of the education and the testing. What's your vision then as you look ahead over the next few years in terms of scale and in terms of maybe expansion? What types of things do you have in mind?
Well, so that's also, you know, chicken and egg kind of. We want to expand. We're looking at some areas. We were looking strongly at Nashville, and then they had the big tornado a month ago, and now the coronavirus. So that might have to be put off. The financing, the monetary support for putting on an event such as ours has to be the first thing that's in place. You know, we've talked about it as a board of directors, and we definitely want to have 10 events nationwide. But we need the physical support in those cities, and we need a volunteer base. Michigan's fantastic, and Newport Beach, but Michigan's a shining example of how the community comes together to bring our event there. With Sean Norden, we have Jennifer Jurgens, who's on our board. They're both on our board, and a whole committee. They're in fact meeting tonight that are
hopefully virtual meeting tonight.
Yeah, virtual meeting. Yeah, they're a conference call just like we're doing on Zoom. But they're getting together tonight, and they're rallying the community. They help with sponsors. They help with logistics. They help get the word out. They help build the community. And that's the key, is our partners, our volunteers, that's part of the community that I talked about that we're building. And with a tight circle like that, we can keep growing the circle within the Midwest, within the country as a whole. And that's really how we can expand.
So you mentioned earlier it was about $35,000 to $40,000 to put together one of these events. How many volunteers does it take, or realistically do you need to pull something off?
It depends on their abilities and their willingness to participate. We probably have 20 physical volunteers on event day, and we probably have a committee of 10 people in each city that they kind of run shot on the day-to-day things that we need to do. Just logistics, like picking up flyers, canvassing with flyers and posters, outreach with the local community chambers of commerce and local businesses, just to get the word out.
Yeah, and that's a really manageable number in the scheme of a lot of events that we see where people are looking for hundreds of volunteers. It becomes a much more challenging logistical environment. I'm sure from what you've described, tell us a little bit about the process you use for finding or screening the volunteers. I know that's always one of the big issues in today's world is how volunteers are recruited and then screened in terms of having them involved with this type of event.
Right. It's different in each city. We generally have one person that's kind of the spearhead for bringing the event to their city. In Seattle, it's Mike Ferrari. He's a sportscaster for Como News. And through his personal experience, he with his wife and other people he knows, he wanted to bring the event there and pull together a team of people that were able to help us out. In Newport Beach, we have this fantastic board member, Carolyn, who has been she worked with Komen for years as the volunteer coordinator, and she's on our board now, and she's assembled an incredible team for that event. In Michigan, it's a crew. Diane Huffman is primarily responsible for, she's like the mayor of Muskegon, the unofficial mayor. That we always need that one person that has the ability to make a phone call and all of a sudden 50 people show up and, all right, what needs to be done? So that's part of the community. Again, I keep talking about, I know, I sound like a broken record, but that's the key to success for Stand Up for the Cure is this community that keeps growing circle by circle by circle.
And I think one thing that'd be great background for our listeners is you've mentioned some of the cities, but why don't we go through kind of the full list of cities where you host events, and just that way people can be familiar with what's out there.
Well, so currently we have our flagship event, which is Newport Beach, California, and our beneficiary there is Susan G. Komen, Orange County. Our second event, and becoming one of our most popular, is Muskegon, and our beneficiaries there are Hackley Community Care and the Van Andel Institute. So we cover research and community programs. Our third event is in Seattle. It's actually Issaquah, Lake Sammamish, and our beneficiary there is Susan G. Komen, Puget Sound. We've had an event in Atlanta. It wasn't as successful as we had hoped. And because of the cost for each event, whether we make $20,000 or $100,000, it costs the same to put on the event. So, we didn't do a repeat there. We did 3 years in Miami, which is an amazing event. It was a smaller event, tight community. Again, we didn't make as much as I had hoped, but we built a really strong community around it. We lost that venue a couple of years ago during the hurricane, and didn't rebuild. So we didn't return there, partly because of my own bandwidth and ability to have that fourth event. But we'd love to bring that one back online. You know, we're looking at Nashville. We've got a strong volunteer there who really wants the event there, but logistically, because of the tornado and because of coronavirus, that's going to be a hard one to pull off this year.
Yeah, I think you look around the country and we've seen hundreds and hundreds of events being canceled, not only in the sports philanthropy space, obviously, right? Every major sport is on hold. You think of the cost and the magnitude of something going on that would require every major professional sport to be on hold, the Olympics to be moved back a year, right? It's truly unprecedented times. And so as you look ahead at your planning, how do you shuffle and shift your calendar to deal with that type of thing?
Well, we do the best we can to be light on our feet, you know, and because we have the ability to reach all these people, you know, online and virtually, that we try to be flexible with our events. So we've moved Newport Beach to November, hoping that's far enough out to be able to continue with that event. You know, it may be smaller because it's winter, but we're hoping that the community is tight enough that they want to show up and continue to give back to the community. You know, the Muskegon event is in July, and we're hoping that, you know, based on Italy and based on the other areas of the world where this virus has taken hold, that's enough time for us to get through it as a nation and get back to the norm. That said, you know, flexibility, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the hard parts in juggling. This is typically when you talk about sort of crisis management, you're reacting to one discrete event or one occurrence that happened in a very short time frame in a very geographically limited space, right? If you have something like Katrina or any of the hurricanes in Florida or 9/11, right? All clearly disasters and horrific occurrences, but you know that those are contained. So once it's done, you can start planning and provisioning. I think here, the challenge is you've got an ongoing pandemic. You've got a moving target. Nobody really knows right now. We can talk as much as we want about where this is going to go, but 2 weeks ago, all sports were proceeding. My daughter's college at the University of Wisconsin, you know, was canceled and called off, you know, on March 11th. So you look at how things proceed. That's only 2 weeks ago, and things have moved very quickly. So what's the world going to look like a few weeks out as we go further into, you know, into the middle and late April, into May? Most things that we've seen have been canceled at least a couple months ahead of where we're at right now, and people are evaluating canceling June, July types of events as well, and it's a real challenge. So as you look at your fundraising and sponsorship efforts, talk a little bit about how you're continuing to work on those initiatives in light of this crisis.
Right. Well, you hit on the logistics part of it, which is one factor, but I think all of us in the philanthropic world are struggling right now because it's hard to make an ask right now when people are out of work and people are unsure of where they're going to go or what they're going to do. So we're trying to make a shift during this period of time to being informative and encouraging and thoughtful and empathetic instead of making the big ask now. Like our ask never stops, our expenses don't stop. We still need the money, but we're trying to be understanding to our participants or, kind of like me, and they're hurting too, right? We are lucky to have partners that are going to continue to support us regardless of when we relocate the event, or if we have to cancel altogether. Most of the sponsors I talk to are still good to their contract or their donation to keep us going. So that's going to be fine. We're all going to make it through it. We may not be able to fund our beneficiaries like we want to this year, but it's part of being flexible. So we're going to double down on our resource management and our ability to get information out to people and to be there for guidance and comfort, for the community. And I think that's just how we have to react.
Well, one of the ongoing conversations in this time of crisis is organizations trying to figure out, should we continue to ask for money, right? How do we continue to ask for what we'll call sort of our baseline funding, because we have to exist, we have to continue to operate in this time of crisis, and yet we may have even greater needs now than we had a few months ago because of everything that's happened. And so now the challenge is, not only do you have that tension that people typically feel about, I don't want to ask other people for money at a time when everybody's struggling, but now we have to go ask them for more money. Right.
So we're in, as a board, we've discussed it. We've got an incredible team on our board of directors. So and this year is a big change. In the past, it was the board of directors was a little, Dan, you're doing a great job. Keep rolling. Now we're a little more proactive. Like, we've got a lot more involvement on our board. So we're developing social media programs, marketing programs, and we're right now going back and forth on messaging during this time, where we want to continue our empathetic message of community while letting people know that we still have needs, right? And we still have beneficiaries that have needs. And if people have that ability to donate, to support, to sponsor, to partner with us, then we really need it. If they don't, we totally understand. We still want them to be part of our community. We want them to get the word out, and they can help in other ways. They can help by volunteering. They can help by spreading word on their social media about and bringing awareness to what good Stand-up for the Cure does. We're spending more time messaging about what our beneficiaries do for the community, so what our impact truly is and where their money goes, so that they can feel good about what they're doing for the community as a whole.
I think that messaging is critical, because, as you said, if it's a time where people aren't comfortable asking for money, or it's more challenging to ask for money, there's so many other elements of building that relationship and building the brand for not only what you're doing, but, as you said, really the work that your beneficiary organizations are doing. That's a critical thing. And so you mentioned your board of directors. So tell us a little bit about the size and the type of people that you have on that board.
Well, there's 6 of us on the board now. We have a variety of expertise represented. The board, except for me, is all women. And they're all leaders in their own right. We have Sean Norden's in the mortgage industry. She's very well connected in the community. She's got a background with Susan G. Komen in Michigan. She was on their board of directors for a period of time. She's one of the ones responsible for bringing me out there. Jennifer Juergens is our president, and she leads a marketing company in Michigan. Super well connected. She was the executive director for Susan G. Komen in Michigan for a few years when we first brought the event there. Carolyn Spivak is from Newport Beach. She was on the Komen staff in Newport. as a volunteer director. So we really use her skill set to help with that event in Newport Beach. Heidi is our marketing director, and she's building a team with one of Jennifer's staff for social media, for marketing, for graphics, for outreach. It's just an amazing team. And it's so nice to know that people have my back. We've brought in a new CFO, and Danny, she's incredible. It is so nice to know that the finance, that's something I don't have to worry about on a day-to-day basis, right? Because it's hard to juggle. I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but when you're juggling porta potties and dumpsters and site logistics with the books and social media marketing and the website, it becomes a lot, and you need a team, and it's a community, and it's a family that's necessary to pull this all together, because one guy can't do it.
I think something people often fail to recognize is that nonprofit organizations, by their nature, tend to be thinly staffed, but they still have all of the same functions and requirements as a regular operating business. Exactly. And in many environments, you see an executive director maybe alone, and maybe there's some interns or a part-time development person, and there's so many areas that are a struggle, and the penalties can be significant, as you identified from a financial standpoint, if there's a failure to comply with what's going on and with the process of registration in the various states in which you operate and in which you raise money. Certainly that's a much greater penalty to you than, let's say, a small glitch with one of the operational elements at an event, where maybe a few people are unhappy, but you're not going to threaten the existence of the organization. Right. What's always interesting to me is you see how well organizations are run, you see how well the events go off, but those of us that have run events know there's always 50 things that happen behind the scenes that other people don't see, that don't fit your checklist, right? This didn't happen properly, the next thing didn't happen. So aside from the little things, as you've gone through and you talked about how long you've been doing this, give us a few examples of some of the mistakes that you made and things that you learned from, that other organizations can get a feel and hopefully help them avoid some of those challenges.
Well, the biggest thing I've learned is to not be a micromanager and to trust my volunteers to do what they're tasked at doing. And, if a garbage bag is put in upside down, it's not a big deal. Or if they forget to put a spare one in the bottom, you can't sweat things like that. You got to trust that it's going to get done. Or if you don't like the way the jerseys are folded, really, come on, right? Those are things that when I first started might have bugged me, but just trust your staff, trust the people that have your back, that all have jobs to do. Because they're pros at that. They know what they're doing. And as soon as you let go of that and you just focus on what you need to do, like at the event, safety, flow, making sure our partners are satisfied. Those are the things that come under my purview and that I can control. Certain things I can't control, and I just got to let it go, because in the big scheme of things, like you said, the participants aren't going to notice, right? That if it's done my way or, Jerry's way, it doesn't matter as long as it gets done. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've had to adapt to over the years, is just not to be a control freak and to just kind of.
Yeah, and I think people really walk away, as you said, from the experience. It's the feeling that they have at the end of the day when they walk away. I mean, we've all experienced it in other settings as simple as restaurants, right? Anybody that's been out to eat on any type of regular basis has had a bad experience with food not being prepared properly, the wrong order being brought out, anything else like that. And really the way you walk away from that restaurant is dictated much more by their reaction to it than the fact that they made a mistake in the first place.
Right.
And how that management at the restaurant or the waiter or waitress at the restaurant handles that is typically what people will walk away remembering.
Right.
And it's the same thing with all of the events over the years that we've done, golf events and everything else. And something's always going to go wrong. Something doesn't get put out, somebody's special
Right.
order meal, and especially in today's world with all of the different types of food, from vegan to vegetarian to gluten-free to everything else, there's a whole array of options that need to be catered
Right.
to. And that's one of the logistical challenges that you talked about. So as you go in and prepare for these events, take us through sort of the timetable of how long that prep process really runs.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to bore everybody, but so it always starts in September for the following year. So for 2020, I started in September. It's budget season. So that's partnerships and vendors and expo. I have to get on the calendar and I have to get them aware of the event and our needs and the marketing opportunities available. So I don't always get replies right away, but that's when it has to start. And then, it's monthly and weekly, and starting then, got to get on the calendar. For every event, you got to start permitting. So all the permitting, all the insurance, alcohol permits are a real pain. That all has to start in September for the following year, because some of that stuff takes months to get into place. So sponsoring.
I want to stop you for a second on the insurance issue, because in light of everything that's going on, that's been one of the most talked about areas from an event perspective. Virtually every contract that's out there has a force majeure clause that talks about reasons why an event may not be held and reasons to get out of a contract that we would all think include something like the pandemic that's going on. But when you actually look at the legal interpretations and how many of those insurance companies are basically saying, no, that's not covered.
Yeah, that's not something we've had to deal with so far, and hope that I don't have to. But it's a thought in the back of my mind. I think so far our partners are understanding. They've all committed to support us regardless. The event, most of them are in public places, so canceling is not a big deal. There's not a big money output there. The permits are paid for, so that's just the loss. Some of our expenses, maybe just a loss, but we can, if they're hard goods, we can hang on to them. My things aren't dated. Jerseys aren't dated.
Are you finding that the permits are reasonably transferable to a later time frame for an event?
If the date's available, most municipalities are pretty easygoing when it comes to that. That takes a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of jumping through hoops, but most of them will accommodate. So that's not a huge deal. It's just, time and paperwork and things. So it's a suck, but for the most part, we're pretty agile, and our partners and communities where we hold the events are super accommodating and understanding. And, I haven't hit any roadblocks.
That's great. Well, I know you talked about bringing in a CFO, and that was a big help to you to get a lot of those functions off to free you up to concentrate on other things. So as you look ahead now, for the next 3 years, if I give you the magic wand that you can wave and bring somebody else in to take another set of responsibilities off of your plate, what's the next set of responsibilities that you're going to bring in?
Well, so our next board member that we've discussed would be somebody who's connected with bigger donors so that we can expand. You know, somebody who's a little better connected in the business world, who can bring in corporate sponsorship. You know, I'm just a guy that puts on paddling events, and I can't talk to Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and guys like that. So our next board member is going to be somebody that has connections like that. They can get the word to those folks that we're flying under their radar so far. So that's my wish.
If people want to find ways that they can help or chip in with your cause, what's the best way for them to contact you or reach out to you?
Well, my email contact's on the website, so they can just go to SUFTC.org. And, you know, there's a sponsorship link, there's a partner link, there's a contact us link, there's fax on the website. So there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of us there. Social media is another way. They can message me through Facebook or Instagram, and I'll get back to them.
Well, you've given us some great information. So before you go, I want to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to use the magic powers that I've secured during this pandemic, and then I'm going to give you the magic wand to become the commissioner of any sport that you choose. Tell us what sport that would be.
Oh, how about paddling?
Paddling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
now you're going to.
There's a big push to bring stand-up paddling and surfing into the Olympics, and right now there's this huge battle between entities that are trying to own it. They want to own stand-up paddling, they want to own surfing, and I'd like to bring everybody under one umbrella, not stop fighting over it, and make it a little more equitable between men and women competitors.
Well, that's certainly something that would be a terrific thing. It always amazes me when you get these turf battles on some of these sports, and they end up doing damage to the sport because you end up, you know, and I'm not saying this is what's going on with paddle, because I certainly have no knowledge from
what's
the
going on with
inside.
paddling.
But, you know, if you're the Olympics or, you know, the USOC or someone else looking at this, your response is going to be, I don't want to deal with this fight. If I have a unified voice to deal with or negotiate with or have a conversation with, I can sit down and look at intelligent conversation and look at a realistic plan on whether it can happen or it can't happen. But if I have to spend all of my time fighting with two factions about who's really in control here, I probably lose my appetite for even supporting that initiative.
My view has always been, we're all on the same team. We're all in it together. We got to figure it out.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I think you gave us a lot of great information. Why don't you give the website one more time for people that are interested?
Yeah, it's www.suftc.org. It's just our initials, Stand Up for the Cure. Everything's on there. All our impacts, all our FAQs, contact information, everything. We could really use the support and spread the word.
Well, terrific. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to having people step up and stand up and see what they can do to help.
Yeah, thank you, Roy, for helping us get the word out.
This is Roy Kessel signing off for the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.